Hey, how's everyone doing? Woo! All right. Thank you all for being here. So, our next speaker is going to be sharing how constraints have fueled hyper efficiency and better decision making with value based analytics. So, please help join me in welcoming Joe Kuzinski to the stage with Bergen Newbridge Medical Center.
All right. Thank you, Jessica. All right. Is everyone excited? So I'll say hello, Domo sapiens. It's the end of the day, so I understand this is probably the last session. So I'll make it good and worth your time. My name is Joseph Kolzinski. I'm the Senior Director of Strategy and Business Analytics at Bergen Newbridge Medical Center in Bergen County, New Jersey. My role is essentially to provide insights, recommendations, and analysis for the strategic planning and operations goals of our organization. I report to the CFO, who's also the SVP of Strategy, and have two wonderful employees underneath me who help support the strategic initiative plans and also the analysis. Some people have trouble with my name, so people like to call me Joe Cool. I'm perfectly fine with that. And I've also often joked that my name is kind of like a good password if you add the number to it. I appreciate it. I'm a new dad, so I'm starting to tell dad jokes already. So my story is kind of interesting, kind of a fun journey. I've always been an entrepreneur and a technical person. So, starting from just being young, even 14 years old, back when computers and PC computing at home was booming, I got really into the computer, and I also married that my love for music, and I actually started basically exploring digital recording kind of long before a lot of people did. So what you guys probably know now in the market is the creators and things like that exploded after 2008. I was kind of doing it back in 1994 and 3. Started selling mixtapes to my friends and producing artists from local area, and then started selling those to stores, and it kind of blew up. And then reality check, I kind of attended Boston University because maybe that wasn't going to work out, but I actually ended up leaving after a year. The pull for music was great, and I was doing so much music even at Boston University in the dorm room, and they kind of kicked me out of the dorms. So I went back to my home, went back to my friend who I started recording with when we were 16 years old. You might know him as Joe Budden. He did the song Pump It Up, and I was part of that journey. We ended up actually creating an album called Joe Budden that reached number 8 on the top 200 Billboard. And from there, kind of leveraged that to meet Rev Run and work on Run DMC and an album called Distortion, where we worked just me and him together in my house. And then, some of that notoriety gave me the access to working with Wyden and Kennedy and working on commercials for LeBron James and Vince Carter and, even video game music beds. And so I did that for a while, and that was great. But then 2008 came and the market was changing. Truthfully said, creators were starting to develop and the price of that service was dropping. So the other thing that was happening was kind of the intrinsic value of what I was doing was not really met, right? So I intended to start out with music for a purpose and a goal and to make impact. And I didn't feel like I was doing it because I was starting to do commercials and things, which is totally fine, but for me. So I had a music producer friend who said, hey, I'm working at a hospital. He was also a nurse and apparently did R&B remixes too. And he's like, hey, I have an idea for you because I know who you are. I know how good you are with this stuff, with technology. And I know how you are, just we'll make anything happen. So he said, come on board, start our central IT service desk in the hospital, right? So I did that. I jumped. It was very humbling. It was a tough career transition from traveling around the country and doing all that stuff, but definitely spoke to my introvert side. So we did that, and then I kind of leveraged that to get into IT ops, and that's kind of where I started to meet like coding and data, and I really met SQL then. Spent a lot of time with the team and like building up my team to code and automate our IT operations. Right? So it was at that time back when that was the big push. Kind of go to lights out and things like that before the cloud really came. And then I leveraged that kind of use of SQL and other things to kind of help the project that we're working on. So I worked on some pretty amazing and led some pretty amazing projects in the hospital, like the transition from ICD-9 to ICD-10, the push for electronic documentation. So I worked a lot with our clinical team and our doctors to really develop the documents that they will use in the system and navigate from paper. And then after all that, and I was very into that, and it was just great. I was like, I love data. That's when I knew like I had my new passion, like kind of replace music, data, and I found my new goal. So I got Microsoft certified SQL for development, SQL development, and then I went to work for the Knot, the Knot magazine, the wedding website company. So they actually brought me on to kind of like bring some of my healthcare operations and some of that rigor to the registry data management process, which was kind of like startup. It was kind of loose, but the task was huge. It was the registry operations was millions of dollars, and it was with over 16 retailers, so it's a pretty big task. At the same time, I was actually going back to school, so I said, all right, this is definitely what I love, so let me get formally trained on it. So I went back, got a business degree / AI, machine learning, kind of worked into that. And the hospital called me back and they were like, hey, everything you did here is still speaking. It's still talking to everyone. So the CIO called back to me and said, hey, can you come back? And I was like, sure, but I have a new idea. And so I said, let me bring analytics to the hospital. Let me change even what I was doing. Like I wanted to even destroy what I was doing at that point. So that's when I joined, and so I'll talk about who I'm representing. I'm representing Bergen Newbridge Medical Center. We're a clinical affiliate of Rutgers. We operate out of Bergen County, but we really are a big impact to the entire state. We serve kind of a niche purpose in Bergen County to where we complete the overall healthcare picture. So what does that mean? Essentially, we have one of the healthiest and highest access counties in the country, actually, for healthcare. So there's some great facilities, but we complement them because we provide care to those who wouldn't otherwise get healthcare, like people without insurance. We also take on the highly complex behavioral health cases and addiction cases. We're one of the most complex institutions to offer which is called 4.0 withdrawal management services, so for addiction patients. But we also offer a very big complement and comprehensive medical service to support the people without insurance. The mission, our mission is basically community health, high quality, compassionate care, and our goal is to raise access for those who need it. So there is no one in Bergen County that does not get the healthcare they need. The vision is pretty big for someone with that kind of niche purpose. It's to be, a national leader in community health and community hospital in that service. So, and our values are compassion, respect, quality, safety, and excellence. So our business. So although we're not a health system, we are the fourth largest publicly operated hospital in the country. And we are the largest hospital and skilled nursing facility in the state. So it's a big operation. We have over 1,000 beds, ranging from mostly long-term care, but a lot of medical surgical beds. Our behavioral health bed count is pretty massive. And we also, to support that and obviously prevent hospitalizations and ED cases, we've built around a very large complement of outpatient care and diagnostic services. So we perform, a lot of the surgeries that all the other centers do when we have a very big complement of outpatient care. We've also recently kind of in the system model, we've started building out locations in the community so we can really reach the communities that really need us. Our customers are from diverse backgrounds with a lot of various needs. So we have to meet them at their language. We have to meet them at their transportation needs. We have to meet them at their socioeconomic needs, right? So a big part of our task is actually, financial assistance and things like that. So And again, we do cover this. The map here you're looking at is, our coverage for for who comes to us from the state, and it's pretty much almost every municipality has someone come to us during the year. But we are predominantly serving Bergen County. So I'll speak to my intentions today, because it is a kind of a special story for me. So you might be on a range of journeys here. So like you might be just starting out with Domo or just interested in Domo, or you might be hoping you leave hopeful that, because we really went from like 0 to 100. So hopeful that you can do it, and you could do it with a limited number of resources. Some of you might be kind of midway through your journey, and maybe I say something that's very technical and inspiring, or strategic and inspiring. So I'm hoping I can meet some of you there. Some of you might just be validated, like, yeah, that's great, we're doing that too. And then some of you might be in that bucket of like, oh, we're way ahead of this, I feel great about myself. That's totally fine too. I don't mind that. So I'm here to basically, for me, I want to raise awareness. I want to, meet potential partners, and I also want to have good debates. So if you have a different idea, if you feel like I was, saying complete garbage, let's debate. I love it. Let's talk. I would love to take this as an opportunity to continue a conversation, not just broadcast my opinions to you. And then for me, it's also, I love show and tell. I do that with my team all the time. I say, what did you did that made you feel good? So I'm going to just kind of use that same approach with you guys and say, look, these are the things I'm proud of. They are high value, but maybe you don't think so. But even the way, I was proud of them. So let's begin. So I'll take you through kind of the origin story, how we kind of selected Domo, and how we came to be what we are with analytics. Something about the people and the process, because really, that's important. How we built out Domo. A little bit of show and tell of our outcomes and some of the things we've done, and then we'll talk through some Q&A. I'd love to get to questions, actually. So it was 2019. The hospital just underwent a major transformation. It's a publicly owned hospital, so it just transferred to a different operator. There was an entirely new management team. They knew that data was going to be big. They just didn't know what to do. We had a lot of systems, a lot of data, and just not a big architecture. Their questions were not being answered. So honestly, I put this picture together too because when I joined, it was one report writer and me. So we were facing a big pile of problems with over 6 billion rows of data, 80 systems, and other facts like that. So the first thing I did, kind of using my new business acumen, was I said, I need a data strategy. So I was very careful about this, and I said, what am I doing here? So I wanted to make data more available, and I wanted to make data more valuable so that they can make quality decisions. Because at the end of the day, these patients really relied on us to make quality decisions. If we wasted $1 of the state's money or anyone's money, it's very impactful. So I really thought about that mission and how it affected my data practice. For the vision, again, kind of meeting my CEO on her grand vision, I wanted data to be a competitive edge or a competitive advantage of the hospital. Like, I wanted to be able to tell a story to say, not only did we just kind of report on ourselves, we actually use it to be competitive. So, my values were kind of about, it had to be real time, it had to become autonomous in a sense, it had to really meet the significance, the criticality, and the value that of each data set had to meet those values. So again, strategy 101 class, let's make a SWOT, right? So some of the weaknesses, and it's very easy to say, like the biggest weakness was there was no data warehouse, right? So they had a major EMR, but it was outdated. It was installed in 2002. So while it was great that they adopted early, it was kind of outdated system. So the problems with that. And then there was a ton of software inflation because of that. So there was just let's install more software to cover those gaps in the EMR. So the inflation of the software is massive over time. So we had a lot of applications, a lot of data, right? And when I joined, there was one report writer. So essentially, on demand, people would ask this report writer requests, and managers would kind of take it from there. We email the reports, and they get it. The strengths were transition. We had new modern management. They believed in the data. We did actually have everything digitized. I know a lot of hospitals still, we're still on paper maybe and kind of struggling through that. So there was a lot of strengths to, having that support and such. And then when you think about the market, the Affordable Healthcare Act and high tech and some of the things were kind of forcing hospitals to digitize, and that's kind of projects I was doing back when I was doing IT. And then they're also forcing them to become data savvy and interoperable. So like having data and working well with it is almost necessary to even thrive and remain compliant in the healthcare space now. And then the opportunities in value-based care, fee-for-service was going away, and we needed to basically achieve the requirements of a value-based care initiatives, right, which require a lot of data. And really, if you need that data also to basically, encourage better outcomes. So I did all that, and big surprise, I landed that we need an analytics platform. But these 5 elements were very important after that SWOT. I really found that we needed a high-value platform. And the platform I quantified as how many use cases can we get out of it? Like, if I install today, what's the potential? Can I do everything I want to do? Can I do a little bit I want to do? So that was key. It had to be low cost. Again, every patient we spend, every dollar we spend for the, that's not for the patient, that's maybe like a business use case or things like that. We have to really think about it. So we have to step into it with like a low risk kind of cost. So we couldn't just go out and just spend a ton of money on this. So it had to be low cost. The IT department was already burdened and small too. So it had to be low maintenance. I couldn't bring in a system that made everyone have to do another upgrade, support and all this kind of stuff. So it had to be low maintenance. We didn't have a great talent pool. We're kind of a nonprofit, so we don't always attract, as far as data is concerned, the highest skilled people. So it had to be easy config. And then, if you work in healthcare, you know how strong kind of like the grapevine is in healthcare and how fast information travels. So I knew I had to get ahead of that in some way and make the data available enough to where I could beat the grapevine and the data can beat, anecdote in a sense. So as you could probably already tell, I'm pretty analytical. I didn't know what system was going to be good, right? And I also didn't want to like just rely on anecdote myself because I thought that's pretty hypocritical. So I did call a few friends. I said, "What do you use?" and things like that. But then I looked to like the Gartner, Forrester quadrants, and I said, "All right, so let me explore everything that's out there." So I honestly took it serious, and I looked at over 20 products. They ranged from like healthcare focused, EMR add-ons, the big systems, and then Domo kind of popped up, and I said, "All right, let me check this out," and I added it in. I also created like a kind of an RFP, RFI question matrix of like, how am I going to evaluate these systems? So it was like 137 questions, ranging from every technical question you could possibly imagine, but also the key questions were, for me, what's your company like? What's the culture like? Do you love your employees? Is it big? Is it small? And then your development cycle. A lot of companies out there kind of, I could tell they're in their maintenance period or their development cycle. I needed a company that was growing because I wanted to grow too. So I wanted to kind of attach to growth. So plugging in kind of a quasi-quantitative thing, I actually came up with this like scatter plot of the systems, and Domo landed in the high value space for us. So there was one other product, but it was 20 times the cost, so kind of no brainer. So that's pretty much how I found Domo. And at the time when I was thinking about what I want and what's out there, like when I finally saw Domo and I saw it compared to everything else, I was like, this is exactly what I needed. It was web-based, it was cloud-based, it was easy to configure. It was the only thing that would make what I wanted to do possible. So I do want to pause for a second to think about how, while I was in 2019, and back in 2012, I was kind of in my dated diapers. Josh James was already thinking of Domo and like this, this amazing product that would make this possible for me. So I do want to pause and congratulate or thank him for that. So, all right, we had the tool, but tools mean nothing if you don't have a process or if the people don't know what to do with it, right? You could actually make worse things. So I look at what was going on, and this word makes me cringe, even to this day when I hear it, reports. We had reports. Give me a list of employees who didn't do X. Give me the accounts that didn't close right. Give me all the problems. I want a list of all the problems. Or give me a dump of everything. I want Q2, all data. And I'm like, okay, good. Have fun. Sorry. Have fun with that. Because I knew where it was going. It was going to someone sitting on their computer, like a manager with Excel, and like, it's 30 columns wide, and they're gonna, and they got 10 minutes to do some kind of evaluation or analysis. And I'm like, so I just, and on top of that, the process was essentially like more like an IT process. Write a ticket, give me the business justification, give me the columns you want, give me the filters you want, right? So, and then even from processing these reports, it's like, it just was like first come, first serve. So like if someone asked for something that was really hard, it came in front of something else, unless we got a call that was like, hey, I need this now. So, that moved it up, or kind of languished. If the report was complex and it required two systems or some kind of advanced transform, right? We only had SQL really. So it just hung there. Right, so that's not really a great process, and it just honestly, with email delivery of all that to Excel and then sitting in managers' computers, it's just not even good for healthcare in general. Even if you think of HIPAA. So definitely wanted to change that. We also had this like IT concept of like users, right? So that's another important fact. It's like kind of what I described. Like you create a ticket, you service the ticket no matter what, and you believe that someone is making the right decision somewhere, right? And you're all in your boxes. So I have a problem with the word users. I feel like coworkers is a better word because you're all working for the same mission, right? So, and this report process was like kind of linear. Like you didn't get feedback, it was reactive. It was always kind of like reports were like who didn't do what or things like that. So I think we all know that, that problem. So I'll move on. But what did I do? I looked to value-based care and what were the core tenets, and I said, okay, I'm going to do the same thing for the analytics because if we're going to go in that direction, I want to go in that direction. So everything I did had to be evaluated, right? So I basically protected my team. I said, listen, we don't do anything, and I'm happy to say no to whoever wants to, make us force us to do anything. I'm happy to say no and explain why I think it's not valuable. So I came with our tickets changed to these 4 questions. Essentially, what's the question you have? Like, what's the business question you have? Like, what is this for? What's the answer that what does the answer actually affect? And then, kind of 2-time questions because people like to say they need it now, but maybe they don't, right? So I had 2-time questions on there to prevent that because I always thought about the opportunity cost. If we're working on something because someone said that they just needed it now, but they didn't, that's a waste, kind of against lean methodology and everything. So made these 4 questions, and I was kind of shocked to see the response. Like some people jumped right in and say, I know exactly why I'm asking for this report, and here you go, and here's also all the information you need about to get create the report. And I was like, all right, great. And then some people had, we talked to them and be like, well, so-and-so asked for this report, and I didn't really know why I asked, but then they asked, so it was just kind of like the transfer value was lost. So what did I change to? Instead of reports and tickets and kind of asking for what you want, I turned into consultations, right? And that gave me the opportunity, after collecting all those questions, as we were preparing for a data warehouse and a data system, I started to get a real clear picture of what was valuable, what data would be valuable to the organization, and kind of pushing the bar back to say, I have something to tell you too, right? Yes, you're the business user. Yes, you know your function. I will not pretend to be a doctor. But, I do know more than you about maybe analytics or this particular, another approach. Maybe it's an operations problem or something like that. So I found that there was always some kind of space where if we stepped out of our boxes, depending on the person, and obviously, we would find that kind of multiplier effect between the people where, you'd get to a new solution, right? So that was key. So I set that up before the build, before we even got Domo. So, and that was starting to work, but now we needed, to really have a system to make that even worth anything. So I moved to the build. The first thing I did when we got Domo is I made sure the activity log was there, and I started to treat it like I was a product manager, right? I set up 3 metrics where I was looking at was basically like how many assets are we creating, to what degree are the users interacting with them, and how are they viewing them, and how many users are actually kind of continuously, like on a weekly or monthly basis, coming into Domo. And I'm pretty proud of this graph because starting from 2020 all the way to 2022, there was perpetual growth, and that was important because I knew I was doing it right because we were concentrating on the value. What was mission critical, and people were staying engaged. It wasn't like a report that just kind of endlessly is sitting there and no one's looking at it. So, treating it like a product in our organization rather than just like a job, and being an entrepreneur in my organization kind of really, changed the perspective or where was the potential. So then the architecture. So, I'm a data engineer certified. So I thought in this space too. And kind of against my advice to go with value, I knew that there was a different type of situation too. So on the connection space, I would say you should always try to connect all your data. I'm notorious in my organization for saying that's in Domo, because the second that something's outside of Domo, you start to go back the other direction, because then they start to say, well, it's not in Domo, and so those kind of things where it's not in the warehouse. So I literally will connect everything. I'm connecting to like NPES for MPI numbers. I'm connecting to CMS for DRG mastering. I'm connecting to and this is all happening as fast as possible because I knew I wanted to say we have that in Domo. And then it slows down a little bit for me in the architecture. Then I from those 4 questions, knowing what data is important, then I extracted the potential, right? So I would only extract the data and actually keep it if I knew it was going to be part of a potential use case, right? With all those questions, I knew the direction where our questions were going and that they were going to get better. So kind of staying ahead of those questions and going, all right, you're about to ask this. Almost predicting questions, actually. So then I was ready with the data. So I would start extracting it. Then I had this other kind of architecture concept of like, I only want to transform it once. Listen, I hate writing formulas, so and beast modes and all those things. So like, I put a lot of this stuff. I built out the architecture deep. So if I had a raw table, you clean it there, and then that asset becomes part of another ETL, and then you kind of build a structure of quality. So like, if you have a mistake somewhere deep, you could essentially change it in one spot, and that was great for a team of 2. So that was important. I said, how can I maintain this? Because if I just let everyone have data and I just make it a completely flat system, that would be impossible. I would never be able to keep up with the errors. So operationally, I knew I had to be very careful about the design. And my concept there was transform once. So never find yourself writing the same formula. If you are, then it means you didn't design it deep. And the last thing was just like kind of the ultimate goal is like architecture is like, we're going to get data from all these disparate systems. So like, I had to come up with an interface ahead of time where I'm unifying the data. So like, you can't just go ahead and start reporting on this from this system if you have charges from another system. You have to think about what are charges and then creating an interface first. So that was the architecture. And it was great because honestly, we have data sets that are maybe 600 columns wide, but like power 400 like very valuable data sets instead of a lot of small little one feeds. And then just economics of it, kind of like 101 there, the production possibilities curve. I had a small team, so we had to balance between being late for some pizza to make robots. So we spent some time, making data sets that were highly valuable. And if someone like needed a report ahead of that, we had to be very careful to not deliver that. So for a small amount of time, we really focused on like, we need to make data sets and ahead of reports. So we had to stop that. So kind of just using economics in that sense of like, what can we accomplish, and then can we make capital goods so that we can deliver? I treated cars and pages like consumer products in my head. All right, so that was a lot of strategy and concepts. So I hope I kept all your attention. Here's a little show and tell. So this is kind of the outcomes from that approach. So I'm happy to share. When we started 2019, I got the Domo instance link February 2020, and then March 2020, we all know what happened. So, and then through the course of COVID-19, we had 167,000 new patients. That was exponentially different than what we were used to. So, and that's because, our CEO was strong and said, we need to get on this. We need to meet our community health vision, and we need to get out there. So I said, okay, we got to support that. And our CIO was a big part of that as well. So that's our new patient dashboard. So we analyze new patients. But within a month, our COVID-19 Domo stack was massive. Like, I was connecting to Workbench to our EMR. I had connected to our lab system. We had SurveyMonkey so that we could register people in advance. We had OneDrive so we could deliver results to clients we engage with to say, we'll do your surveillance testing. We had problems with our workforce. People weren't kind of coming in with COVID when it first started, right? So I connected to our punch system, Kronos, and actually developed a custom connector within a couple days. It didn't really take a lot of work. And so all these connections, again, I focused on all these connections to build this stack. And then we built the data on that very fast. And it was kind of able to do everything. And so we had, a lot of front-end monitoring. We had delivery pipelines to in a secure HIPAA, safe Dropbox to different, we were testing and vaccinating multiple schools and colleges in the area. So a lot of volume, a lot of things fast. And the one particular aspect that was important to us too was we were actually paying a company to process our data for some of our COVID-19 lab specimens, and they were messing it up. So I talked to our COO at the time, and I said, let me give it a shot with Domo. And it was essentially all we had to do was set up an API to this lab processing center for specimen, and they would give us 2 data points. So with everything I had already built out, I was able to create a safe process that would take our lab collections of specimens, send to this data processing, and allow us to send results and become the data interface between that instead of relying on a company. So it saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we were able to use Domo to do that. Doing that also created a claims impact, right? With all these new claims and all these new people, we had a lot of claims held. So I connected to our claim editing system and essentially segmented all the problems we were having in our claims. And slowly we built data sets that would fed back into the claim system or the EMR to adjust the coding and adjust the procedures and all that stuff so that we were actually automatically addressing the claim errors, and we got all our claims out the door. So we turned something where we had 35,000 claims or whatever numbers sitting there, we got that down. The other problem that COVID kind of accelerated, which I knew I wanted to get to anyway, I'm a big fan of record matching, but patient duplication is a big problem, right? So it was really bad during COVID because you're registering a lot of people fast, and so you get some multiple entries. So with Domo, I was able to just kind of real time write in an ETL, use the Python tile, and I've been working on a record matching algorithm for years. So I just kind of put it in there, and kind of based on ML and a little bit of other techniques, probabilistic record matching, and I was able to put a report for all the problems we had for duplications, and our HI team was able to merge those patients so that the results were going to the right patients, and we actually held if they were identified as a duplicate, and we weren't sure. The next big opportunity that we came across our plate was value-based care. So there's an initiative in New Jersey called the QIP, Quality Improvement Program. It's over $167 million dedicated to allowing hospitals to provide better quality to Medicaid patients in the behavioral health and maternal health spaces. So it has 12 measures and a data book and all sorts of rules. And again, in the past, we were in programs like this, and we relied on vendors, and they never met the mission, and we had trouble. We actually lost a lot of money in those situations. So I said to our CFO, "Let me do this." He trusted, and we built out real-time dashboards for our value-based care. So kind of going through the data book and seeing how we can make it happen from our data. Some of it was claim-based stuff. We didn't have access to all the market, but we make estimations and predictions. And it turned out, in the first year, we passed all our measures. The second year passed all our measures. And I did hear reports that other hospitals were struggling, and these were hospitals that are bigger than us. And so part of my dream to have a competitive advantage with data was happening. We were not only getting what the targeted funding, we were getting redistributed funds for hospitals that didn't meet the measures. So in submitting our data, we were one of the few hospitals that didn't have to resubmit, and that's even true for some of the hospitals that had vendors. So big advantage there. The other big advantage to this was we had great conversations. Like the meetings were great. The dashboard was up. And if someone were to try to throw a wrench or had a great idea, you know what? It became a filter. Let's just filter real quick and let's see if that's true. Or, oh, you know what? Let me whip up a card that shows it by day. No, that's not really a big, we'd have that immediate answer to what we were trying to strategize. So it created a situation where we were actually able to affect change instantly and in one meeting, not 10. So it was great. And then, so this is kind of some of our outcomes of those 2 years. We were able to raise this is one of the measures for follow-up care after hospitalization, which is key for, kind of continuing and having good outcomes so they don't readmit and go back to your ED. We were able to raise, that follow-up rate well beyond the state limit in just 2 years. We had 5 years to do what we did in 2 years because we addressed the problem directly. One of the ways we did that was, and if anyone's familiar with social determinants of health, somewhere between 35 and 50% of a patient's care is determined by their social determinants. That's things like their family life, their income, transportation barriers, all that stuff. So even all of us, really, that determines such a big part of our health, So what we did was, someone hypothesized that transportation was going to be the biggest part of why behavioral health patients didn't show up to our outpatient care after service. So I said, let's test that. So let's offer free rides to a select, group. Let's kind of A/B test it and see if it's effective. So we built, kind of a dashboard and an operation to where, our access center was giving the offer about a ride if the patient showed need during the stay, directing that to our patient navigators who would call the patient and say, hey, your ride's ready and things like that. And we had these dashboards to operate this. We also had just strategically looking at, what was the lift. So we found that, the no-show rate for the outpatient care was able to drop by 9 points. And so offering that free transportation to the patients that need it was kind of even just a win-win clinically and financially. So we ended up continuing that. And the other part of this is, kind of having a budget being so slim to, for our nonprofit and just really trying to remain fiscally sound. People need to know what's dropping off or what's not meeting the target. So we have this, what we call the daily pulse, which is basically all of our operational volumes, some of our quality metrics, and it's going to be expanding. But what you're looking at here is essentially our own custom DDX brick KPI matrix where you could actually feed it multiple categories and targets and everything, and it actually lays out like a matrix like this for you, because I didn't really have the time to build 100 cards that my CFO wanted for this thing. So we kind of came up with that, and I was working with a junior developer from Rutgers who actually supported this as well. Bed management. So essentially with the custom SVG visualizer, we were able to create a pretty good bed board. And it busted a lot of myths for us. So a lot of people were saying, oh, environmental services didn't get to the bed in time, or maybe the nurses were doing something wrong or whatever. So through this bed board, we actually watched it in real time, and we targeted the cases immediately and said what happened. We really learned it fast that it was actually an arrival problem. It wasn't a discharge problem. So a lot of people have been wrong this whole time and just kind of blaming each other. So and the other thing we really helped to do is we actually predicted our bed availability. So one of the biggest problems when you're running a hospital is can you tell another hospital that they can send a patient here? Like how many beds are going to actually be available? So besides, basically putting together between, cases that we knew were kind of coming on board elective, or when discharge orders were going to be, kind of looking ahead, we were able to say to our bed management team, all right, here's the prediction for how many beds will be available so that they can get an occupancy rate higher than we might have gotten in the past, right? So that's been key to raise that bar. We also have a Domo in our utilization review meeting. So interestingly enough, I actually lead that meeting where, it used to be a meeting where everyone would kind of argue about what's, going on and prior auths and what happened with this patient and everything. But like with Domo, we were able to centralize around, a couple key metrics and kind of, instead of riding the news cycle of we're up this month, we're down this month, and this is bad this month, we, kind of put together a little bit more of a statistical visualization so everyone can see that we're still in range. We're good. Our CMI is in range. We're kind of, our length of stay is close to the mean, the mean length of stay based on the, the CMI or so we're running smooth, and it kind of created a culture of actually like good debate and good actions. And then finally, on show and tell, we have a pretty advanced revenue model. I don't know if other hospitals or other people know about this problem in healthcare. There's something called gross revenue, where we essentially, you might see it on your bills. You see crazy charges, so like Tylenol being $100 and things like that, right? So that's gross revenue to us. And then that gets contractually adjusted down based on your insurance or based on, certain, state requirements, whatever, into what would normal businesses just call revenue, right? Because we have this contractual adjustment. So we don't necessarily know our revenue real time. Healthcare typically is about a month, 2-3 months behind, right? Because we get adjustments come in. Some hospitals build up contract management systems to kind of prevent this, where you just say, all right, we'll put the contractuals right there. But that doesn't give you always real time. You still have to wait for the coding. You still have to wait for the DRG. So using Domo, I was able to leverage AI to build really 3 models. One was reading like our actual information during the stay to start to predict the value of this patient. And we could actually have a real-time revenue forecast for the month. Not only that, we had, our net AR had we had a value-based list on what's important right away. And the other thing that was necessary to do this was I had to build a denials model. So, we had to take in the data from denials, but also I started to use NLP to like read notes from our UR team and things like that to say like, hey, this is headed for denial. So like, so it's like a denial probability score in a sense. So using that combined, we actually were to come to a good estimate of what our revenue is and, at the account level to a very, high degree of accuracy. So I'm done. I'd love to hear questions from you. I'd say my only key takeaway, if you were to take it, is like, if you're working with data, think strategically, right? I know that it's become fashionable to be like, what's the use case and work on that use case, but I think there's some value in going backwards a little bit and connecting as much and extracting potential maybe ahead of a use case, right? And also think about use cases because they multiply on each other, right? So I think strategically with your data. And then also like make the goal wisdom, right? Because data is one thing, but I think we all have better judgment so far, or at this point in time, than some of the data. And so like making sure everyone sees the data all the time, real time, and gets that wisdom about what's going on in their organization, because then you have great conversations. So the warm data is just as good as the cold data. And if you give people enough cold data, yeah. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions? Do we have time for questions? Yeah? Okay.
Just ask to use the microphone because we're recording. Hi there. So you mentioned there was 3 models for predicting revenue, one of which was the actuals during stay. Then there was the denial model.
Yeah.
What was the third?
Or so
was there like a 2-parter?
Yeah, no. So I had two denials. One basically predicting during the notes, during the stay, and the other one reading the remit. I didn't get into that, but remits have a ton of codes that make it sometimes hard to predict whether it was a contractual adjustment versus an actual denial.
I'll go next. We're both from the same place. We're very interested in healthcare. So for us, the biggest challenge is we're in the telemedicine space. So we're really across a lot of states, a lot of insurance plans, very complicated. So from the denial perspective, you're using the codes and tying it to the insurance, or are you diving into, the contractual amount, like backing into that? Like, how are you really getting to that net number every month? Or the weight you're putting on each methodology? Because I'm expanding on those internally, but, we don't know how much weight to apply to each.
Yeah, so I mean, without going into too much like proprietary,
Yeah.
I'm happy to have it offline, but essentially, I would say it's two things, right? You have the value being estimated based on the service that's going on during the stay, and then you have two things reading the denial, and the one that's kind of learning the denial gives you the probability, and then it's just kind of a calculation because I have the value, so if I didn't get that value back after I'm paid, I know what happened. Yeah, so I can almost give you just like a clean denial amount. Yeah.
I think that's it.
All right. Sure.
So when you started the Domo journey, in the beginning, you kind of said that you had like essentially like a request form, right, with the
Yeah.
questions. So once you get past that point, and that probably lasts like a year and a half, and you make like whatever amount of dashboards you want. So how do you like strategically get involved in the business enough to extrapolate the ideas and solutions you can build from people that might not know what's possible? Like the...
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's a very key question. So I'm happy you asked that. And I didn't say that. So one of the biggest things I said to the CAO when she asked me to join was, I need to be able to say no. And a no is the start of the negotiation. There's actually a great book I'll recommend. But that creates a negotiation to where they need something and you want to help them, right? And if you have some value to add and they're kind of rejecting it, you kind of get into the negotiation of well, do we need this then? If you're not willing to engage in a meaningful conversation, do you actually need this? And so sometimes it went back to the CIO and it would be a big deal, but I still held my ground in a sense and said, no, we have to discuss this. There's potentially a better opportunity here. Not many people realize this, but the data people see the entire organization's questions. So while you think they're stuck in the data, they're actually getting a more strategic look in the organization sometimes than some people who are stuck in their siloed business area or their department. So leveraging that is key, especially you have some people who are like very interested to learn more. So definitely like executives or anyone managers, think about that. It's kind of a hidden thing that's missing in, I think, a lot of what I've seen. Yeah. That's it? Yeah. Well, I humbly stand before you. I hope this was helpful. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and happy to field more questions or get to know you more outside of this. Thank you.